Alright, what's good, y'all? Welcome back. This week I'm about to be starting a new iceberg. This is the Ancient World Mysteries iceberg. Fair warning beforehand, I'm going to be skipping the first two tiers of this one, and I'm going to be starting at the third, just because a few of the ones on the first two tiers I had already covered in the Lost Locations iceberg. And other than that, same exact thing as the last one. I'm going to try to hit every single point, and I'm just not going to go as into detail on this, so I can try to make them a little bit quicker. I want to make them only like one tier per video, so other than that, man, make sure that y'all like, subscribe, all that other YouTube stuff, and we're just gonna hop right into it. All right, so first up, we're starting at level 3, like I said, tier 3. First up on this one is ancient automatons. The ancient Greeks were thought to have provided the earliest examples of automata. We know that their engineering skills were further developed than the rest of the world at that time, and to them, the idea of building mechanical machines that mimicked like living beings, creatures, basically people, robots, kind of things like that, was somewhat of an obsession to them because of like all the stuff in their mythology and all this. Like I said, mythology provides us with a great number of stories regarding amazing mechanical objects and people. Many of these are no doubt just what they are, like a myth, you know what I mean? So a lot of them are made up. You gotta take them mostly with a grain of salt. But we do know that as a result of their advanced abilities, they were capable of devising machines powered by steam and water, as well as contraptions worked by human-made levers, basically. So human-operated levers, they had a bunch of different kind of machinery. The famous Greek mathematician Hero of Alexandria devised a water basin that featured metal birds which sang, along with a mechanical owl that would turn its head around to look at the birds and make them go quiet. So that's pretty crazy that they had that all the way back in ancient Greece, you know what I mean? And one of his most well-known creations was a wind wheel, which is possibly the oldest example of man harnessing the power of wind without it actually being like on a water kind of wheel. Yeah, basically that just shows that automata or like robots and mechanical stuff like this has always been getting made, especially like way back in ancient Greece. They kind of had this obsession with it, so pretty dope. Moving on to the next thing though. The Gundestrup Cauldron. So the Gundestrup Cauldron is a richly decorated silver vessel thought to date somewhere between 200 BC and 300 AD. The cauldron is the largest known example of European Iron Age silverwork. Its diameter is about 69 centimeters, which is 27 inches. Its height is about 42 centimeters, which is about 17 inches. It was found dismantled with the other pieces stacked inside the base in 1891. It was found in a peat bog near the hamlet of Gundestrup in the Ars parish of Himmerland, Denmark. And basically the cauldron is not complete. It now consists of a round cup-shaped bottom making the lower part of the cauldron, usually called the base plate, above which are 5 interior plates and 7 exterior ones. A missing 8th exterior plate would be needed to actually encircle the cauldron, but it's missing, and only 2 sections of a rounded rim at the top of the cauldron survived. So the rest of this thing was kind of broken apart and just, was never found. The base plate is mostly smooth and undecorated inside and out. Apart from a decorated round medallion in the center of the interior, all other plates are heavily decorated with repousse work. It's hammered from beneath to push out the silver, so it's basically hammered from the inside out to kind of push this. Other techniques were used to add detail, and there's extensive gilding and some use of inlaid pieces of glass for the eyes of the figure. So when you actually look at this thing is pretty crazy, you know what I mean? Because even nowadays, people don't make good quality shit, you know? Moving on. Next up is the Man of Wilmington. So the Man of Wilmington, or the Wilmington Giant, is this hill figure on the steep slopes of Windover Hill near Wilmington in East Sussex, England. Locally, the figure was once called the Green Man, and basically this figure is 235 feet or 72 meters tall. It holds these 2 staves and is designed to look in proportion when viewed from below. So basically when you're looking at it from below, you can actually see the entire figure of a person. The origin of the Long Man remains unclear. An early suggestion, sometimes stated to be a local tradition, was that the Long Man was cut by monks from a nearby Wilmington priory and represented a pilgrim. So this is what people were locally thinking. But this was not widely believed by antiquarians, who felt that monks were unlikely to have created an unclothed figure. Until fairly recently, the Long Man was commonly asserted to have been cut in the Neolithic period, primarily due to the presence of a long barrow nearby, or given an Iron Age attribution based on a perceived similarity to other hill figures. So basically there's a bunch of other hill figures like this around, not this area, but specifically around, and they all came from the Iron Age, so people were just kind of assuming it came from the same age. But a 2003 archaeological investigation has shown that the figure may have been cut as early in like the modern era, basically around the 16th or 17th century. And basically the modern figure is formed from white painted breeze blocks and lime mortar. So pretty dope. I mean, if you go here, let me know if you've ever seen it. It's not that crazy, but moving on to the next one. All right, up next is Darius the Mede. So Darius the Mede is mentioned in the book of Daniel as being king of Babylon in between Belshazzar and Cyrus the Great. But he is not known to history, and no additional king can be placed in between these two known figures. Most scholars view this guy as just a literary fiction, basically just like a made-up figure. But some have tried to harmonize the book of Daniel with history by identifying him with various known figures, notably Cyrus or Gobrius, who was the general who was the first to enter Babylon when it fell to the Persians in 539 BC. In the story of Daniel in the lion's den, which is in the book of Daniel chapter 6, Daniel had continued to serve at the royal court under Darius and has been raised to high office. His jealous rivals plot his downfall, tricking Darius into issuing a decree that no prayers should be addressed to any god or man but to Darius himself, on pain of death. Daniel continues to pray to the God of Israel, and Darius, although deeply distressed, must condemn him to be thrown into the lion's den because he edicts of the Medes and Persians cannot be altered. At daybreak, the king hurries to the place, and Daniel tells him that his God sent an angel to save him. Darius commands that those who had conspired against Daniel should be thrown to the lions in his place along with their wives and children. And that's basically all that's mentioned of Darius. So nobody really knows if he's actually a real person or if he was just like a placeholder for an actual figure throughout history. But he's only mentioned here, and there is no actual king that can be placed throughout history in between Belshazzar and Cyrus the Great. So maybe he's real, maybe he wasn't, maybe he was just, a made-up name for somebody else. But world may never know, my guy. Anyways, moving on to the next thing. Next up is the Black Sea Flood. So the Black Sea deluge is the best known of three hypothetical flood scenarios proposed for the late Quaternary history of the Black Sea. It is one of these two flood scenarios which propose a rapid, even catastrophic rise in sea level during the late Quaternary. In 1997, William Ryan, Walter Pittman, Petko Dimitrov, and their colleagues first published the Black Sea deluge hypothesis. They proposed that a catastrophic inflow of Mediterranean seawater into the Black Sea freshwater lake occurred about 7,600 years ago, or around 5,600 BC, and proposed the early Holocene Black Sea flood scenarios described an event which would have profoundly affected prehistoric settlements in Eastern Europe and adjacent parts of Asia, and possibly was the basis for the oral story concerning Noah's flood. So basically, this is like the hypothesis of why people think that the story of like Noah's Ark and that whole great flood was actually written down. People propose that it was this actual Black Sea flooding from Mediterranean sea waters. Criticisms of the deluge hypothesis focus on the magnitude and pace of the water level rise in the Black Sea. With enough moderation of these features, catastrophe hypothesis is voided. So basically, when you look at the actual rise in sea levels over time, the catastrophe hypothesis is basically just like null and void. It's not really worth it. However, a few key points should be noted. Since the ending of the last glacial period, the global sea level has risen some 120 meters, or about 390 feet. And the flood hypothesis hinges on the geomorphology of Bosmorphus since the end of the glacial age. The Black Sea area has been sealed off and reconnected many times during the last 500,000 years. So basically, the Black Sea has been, they've had like land bridges connecting and disconnecting due to rise in sea levels, and basically like rise and falls of sea levels. So it's been connected to the ocean multiple times, and then it's also been locked off from the ocean multiple times over the last 500,000 years. So who really knows? But anyways, I'm not sitting too long on that one. We're moving on to the next. All right, so up next are the Vinča symbols. So the Vinča symbols are also sometimes known as the Danube script. Basically, these are a set of untranslated symbols from the Neolithic era that basically were found on a ton of different artifacts from the time, from the Vinča culture of Central Europe and Southeastern Europe. And basically, to give you a time frame, the Neolithic era is around 7000 BC to 1700 BC. Just to give you like a quick little time frame. Anyways, whether this is one of the earliest writing systems or simply symbols of some sort is like highly disputed. Basically, people don't really know. They have sometimes been described as pre-writing or proto-writing. And in 1875, archaeological excavations directed by the Hungarian archaeologist Zsófia Torma at Tordos, which is present-day Romania, unearthed a cache of objects inscribed with previously unknown symbols. Now, in 1908, a similar cache was found during excavations directed by Serbian archaeologist Mijoje Vasic in Vinča, which is a suburb of Belgrade, which is now in Serbia. And basically, over 150 Vinča symbol sites have been identified in Serbia alone. But many, including Vinča itself, have not been fully excavated. So a lot of these sites just basically they found them, never really dug too deep into them. They actually like aren't fully excavated. Thus, the culture of the whole area is called the Vinča culture, and the symbols are often known as the Vinča/Turdus script, or also the Danube scripts, like I said before. And basically, the discovery of the Tataria tablets in Romania by a team directed by Nicole Vlasa in 1961 revived this entire debate. Vlasa believes the inscriptions to be pictographs, and other items found at the site of the discovery were subsequently radiocarbon dated to be before 4000 BC. So super old, definitely in the Neolithic era, definitely way earlier than the 1700 BC, which was 1300 years earlier than the day that Vlasa expected, basically. So this was even older than they thought it was going to be, and predating the writing systems of the Sumerians and the Minoans. However, the circumstances of their discovery and authenticity of the tablets themselves is disputed. So this may be the oldest form of writing or pictography, symbols, whatever, besides like super old caveman stuff, but the authenticity of like the tablets where they were actually found on is just still highly debated today. And yeah, there hasn't really been too many updates since then, so who knows. But we're moving on to the next one. All right, so this one is a weird one. Ancient Greek zombies. All right, so basically, research conducted by an archaeologist named Carrie Solowski Weaver of the University of Pittsburgh has shown that the zombie craze is not a new phenomenon, but one with evidence going back more than 2,000 years. According to a report on her work in Live Science, Solowski Weaver studied 2 burials from a necropolis in a Greek settlement on the island of Sicily that she considered peculiar because they hold what she believes to be the remains of revenants, which is basically a zombie, which is pretty fucked up. Anyways, the ancient Greeks believed that certain dead bodies could reanimate, and that to keep them in their graves, they had to be ritually killed or trapped inside some way, basically trapped inside this little necropolis or grave, whatever, such as pinning the body down with amphimorpha fragments or large stones, as was done at Passo Minaro. Now, there's not a ton of information on this, which I hate, because this is like the craziest one on here so far, to be honest, and there's not much. That's literally all I could find. So if you can find some more information, please let me know. I will do a whole other video on this, because ancient Greek zombies, because what the fuck, that's crazy. But we moving on to the next one, because I couldn't find that much on it. Anyways, I just had to do that because it's fire. That's dope, you feel me? So moving on. All right, so up next is Hermes Trismegistus. Basically, this is a legendary Hellenistic figure that originated as a syncretic combination of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. He is the purported writer of the Hermetica, which is a widely diverse series of ancient and medieval texts that lay the basis of various philosophical systems known as Hermeticism. The wisdom attributed to this figure in antiquity combined a knowledge of both the material and the spiritual world, which rendered the writings attributed to him of great relevance to those who were interested in an interrelationship between the material world and the divine. And basically, the figure of Hermes Trismegistus can also be found in both Islamic and Baha'i In those traditions, Hermes Trismegistus has been associated with the prophet Idris. And yeah, that's pretty dope. I think it's kind of weird that they combine two gods. Like, I don't really understand that. Anyways, that's Hermes Trismegistus for you. We're moving on to the next thing. Okay, so up next is Mithras and Mithraism. I'm not going to go too deep into them because basically Mithraism is like this low-key kind of religion that was really short-lived. Anyways, Mithra is the Iranian god of the sun, justice, contract, and war in pre-Zoroastrian Iran. Mithraism is just the worship of Mithra. And basically, it was really pronounced in the Roman Empire during the 2nd and 3rd centuries. And basically, this deity was honored as the patron of loyalty to the emperor. And after the acceptance of Christianity by the Emperor Constantine in the early 4th century, Mithraism basically just kind of went away after that. It like declined super fast because everybody was getting hip to Christianity. So if you are interested in that, then go look into it yourself. It was like this entire long story, and I'm trying to keep these like relatively short. So I'm just going to move on to the next one. Don't be too mad. All right, up next is Plutonium at Hierapolis. So Pluto's gate was this Ploutonion, and a Ploutonion is basically this religious site that was dedicated to the god Pluto. It was located in the ancient city of Hierapolis, which is now in today's Turkey, and the exact age of this site is unknown still. So we don't know the exact age of this exact site, but Hierapolis itself was founded around the year 190 by the king of Pergamum, which was Eumenes II at the time. And basically this religious site, or this Ploutonion, was built on top of a cave which emits toxic gas, hence why it was used as like this ritual passage to the underworld, or why they all thought that this had this like super crazy powers. They used to do a ton of ritual animal sacrifices here. They would basically throw the animals into the cave, and then they would tie these ropes to them before they did it, and they would yank them out a couple minutes after, you know, hoping it was a sacrifice. Now, the cave itself was just like a really tiny cave. It was only small enough for about one person to enter. You go in through this little fenced-in entrance, and basically beyond that, you would go down these stairs. And once you were in there, basically, you would already feel this like carbon dioxide gas kind of coming in. Basically, it was all caused by underground geological activities at the time. They clearly didn't know that. They thought this was all the god Pluto kind of fucking with them. And basically, behind this chamber was this cleft in the rock, and through that all this toxic gas was spilling out. And basically, because it was this whole ritual site, and because, you know, the culture at the time and everything, they figured that this gas was sent by Pluto, who was the god of the underworld, to basically, who knows, kill them, whatever they thought at the time. But anyways, moving on to the next one. I just thought that one was pretty interesting because it was basically just like these people just constantly going near this poison gas cave that's killing them. I don't know. Crazy. I bet you if they saw that nowadays, they'd be like, damn, we're fucking stupid, but whatever. Moving on. All right, so up next is the Antikythera Mechanism. So basically, this mechanism was an ancient Greek mechanical device used to calculate and display information about astronomical phenomena. The Antikythera Mechanism had the first known set of scientific dials or scales, and its importance was recognized when radiographic images showed that the remaining fragments contained nearly 30 gear wheels. No other geared mechanism of such complexity was even like existed until medieval cathedral clocks were built almost a whole millennium later. And basically, the remains of this ancient computer are now on display in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, and they were recovered in 1901 from the wreck of a trading ship that sank in the first half of the 1st century near the island of Antikythera in the Mediterranean Sea. And basically, the manufacture date around it is given to be around 100 BCE, which is pretty fucking old, and give or take that 30 years. So somewhere around that area. Could either be 30 years earlier, 30 years later, somewhere around 100 BC though. So that's that one. All right, so up next is the lost mine of Ophir. Having ruled on or around 970 BC, the legendary King Solomon is arguably one of the most recognizable characters from within the pages of the Old Testament. He was the 3rd king of Israel. Solomon was a renowned ruler that oversaw growth from a single state into a venerable superpower of the Middle East in biblical times. During his near 4-decade regency, he had a reputation of wisdom and clear judgment. But King Solomon had another aspect to his legend: his immense wealth from gold that historians say came from the lost mine of Ophir. This brings us to one of the greatest mysteries of all times that nobody can seem to agree on. Where was Ophir? Basically, no one knows where this place is. By today's standards, Solomon was reputed to have a personal fortune in excess of 60 trillion. So, I mean, people are pissed at billionaires because this dude was pushing 60 trillion by today's standards. And that's all in gold. Pretty much mostly pure gold, okay? He owned about 500 tons of gold. King Solomon's temple, which was built in the mid-10th century, was beckoned in gold. At his palace, builders constructed his throne from a combination of gold and other precious metals, including ivory. A gold footstool rested at the base. So this dude was putting his feet up on gold, because like I can't even fathom this. What? Leading up to his golden throne, a dozen life-size replicas of lions formed a guard of honor on 6 steps. Like, bro, this man was living lavish. Crazy. Anyways, scholars believe that Solomon worked with another regent, Phoenician King Hiram, to acquire vast quantities of gold. Hiram ruled the region known at the time as Tyre, which was believed to be located in nowadays Lebanon. And basically, a lot of people think there's a few possible locations of where people think the actual mine of Ophir is. This includes Zimbabwe in Africa, somewhere in the Philippines, and people have also thought somewhere in Brazil, but obviously none are confirmed. So who knows? Whoever finds that, bro, let me in on that. 60 trillion, cuz you do not need that much, and crazy. Anyways, moving on to the next thing. Okay, so most of you guys have probably heard of Stonehenge, but up next we have Woodhenge. So Woodhenge is a Neolithic timber monument built in about 2500 BC, around the same time as actually Stonehenge was built, and it's only 2 miles away to the northeast from Stonehenge. It was formed of 6 concentric ovals of standing posts surrounded by a bank and a ditch, which were built to align with the summer solstice sunrise. The site was discovered by aerial photography in 1925 and was excavated in 1926 through 27 by Ben and Maud Cunnington, who marked the positions of the wooden posts with these concrete pillars for visitors for whenever they came. And basically, when Woodhenge was first excavated, many objects were found, including grooved ware pottery, carved chalk objects, antler picks, animal bones, flint tools, and fragments of human remains, and at least 1 human cremation. Now, basically, a lot of people figured that this place was a ceremonial site, unlike Stonehenge, because they didn't really find too many things when they actually had done excavations and stuff on Stonehenge. Although here they had found 2 people buried at the site. One was around like a 2 or 3 year old baby that was buried near the center. And another one was a young man that was buried in the ditch. And also they found the cremation and a few fragments of the human remains. And the burial from the ditch has been dated somewhere around 1760 to 1670 BC, which was during the early Bronze Age. So yeah, it was basically like a religious thing, you know what I mean? Something for spiritual reasons. Anyways, moving on to the next one. Alright, so up next is the Anunnaki. So the Sumerians lived in Mesopotamia, which is present-day Iran and Iraq, and they lived in between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers from about 4500 to 1750 BC. Now, despite them being an ancient civilization, their reign was marked by numerous impressive technological advancements. For example, these people invented the plow. They invented cuneiform, which is basically one of the earliest forms of human writing. They also invented a method of keeping track of time, which is basically what we still do today. You know what I mean? We still use that. We still keep track of time. But basically, according to these people, they did not do it alone. They owed almost all of their historic breakthroughs to a group of gods called the Anunnaki. And they're telling the Anunnaki mostly descended from An, which is a supreme deity who could control both the fate of human kings and his fellow gods. They left evidence of their beliefs in ancient texts, including the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest writings in human history. Much of what we know about the Sumerian civilizations comes from clues that they left behind in thousands of clay tablets. Now, in 1976, a scholar named Zachariah Sichman wrote a book called The 12th Planet, which shared translations of 14 of these tablets related to Enki, a child of the Sumerian supreme deity, An. Alright, so Enki is the son, basically, or child of An, which is the basically supreme deity of the Anunnaki themselves. All right. His book claimed that the Sumerians believed that the Anunnaki came from a far-off planet called Nibiru, and according to Stitchman, Nibiru has elongated orbit of 3,600 years. At one point, this planet passed close by to Earth, and its people, the Anunnaki, decided to make contact with our world about 500,000 years ago. And since then, basically, you know what I mean, they continuously kind of helped out civilizations and stuff like that. Couldn't really figure out where they thought they went after this. And it's kind of hard because the Sumerians and all this, basically, obviously they're not around to tell us what they think, and we can only really get what we can like get off these tablets. So it's pretty hard, but I think this shit's super interesting. I might make another video just like completely breaking down the Anunnaki and all this stuff, because there's a ton of shit that goes into these. Like, this is like the basis of a lot of conspiracies and a lot of weird shit. So might do that at some point, but I'm moving on to the next thing anyway. So all right, so up next is Newgrange. Basically, Newgrange is a 5,200-year-old passage tomb located in the Boyne Valley in Ireland's ancient east. Newgrange was built by Stone Age farmers. Basically, the mound is about 85 meters or 279 feet in diameter and 13 meters or about 43 feet high. And it covers an area of about 1 acre, so it's pretty big. Anyways, a passage leads into the chamber with these 3 alcoves, and the passage and the chamber are aligned with the rising sun on the mornings around the winter solstice. And basically, Newgrange itself is surrounded by 97 large stones called curbstones, some of which are engraved with these megalithic art. And the most striking is this entrance stone right here. Doesn't really have anything like that stands out. It's more, it kind of looks like swirls and stuff like that, but cool enough. Anyways, archaeologists classify Newgrange as a passage tomb. However, Newgrange is now recognized to be much more than a passage tomb, more like an ancient temple. Basically, it's a place of astrological, spiritual, religious, and ceremonial importance to the area. Much as present-day cathedrals are places of prestige and worship where dignitaries may be laid to rest, same thing with this place. Basically, it's like a church. So if you're going to have funerals and stuff like that, Newgrange is where you would have gone 5,200 years ago. So there's that. Pretty short one, but moving on to the next one. Up next is the Roman Dodecahedron. So a Roman dodecahedron, or a Gallo-Roman dodecahedron, is this small hollow object made of a copper alloy which has been cast into a regular dodecahedron shape, which is about 12 flat pentagonal faces, and each face having a circular hole of varying diameter in the middle, and the holes are connecting to this hollow center. No mentions of dodecahedrons have been found in any contemporary accounts or pictures of this time. Speculative uses include as survey instruments for estimating distances to or sizes of distant objects, or devices of determining optimal sowing date for winter grain. Basically, people just don't know exactly what it was used for. They're just kind of guessing at this point.
What the hell is that?
Several dodecahedron were found in coin hoards, providing evidence that the owners either considered them valuable objects or believed that they were only use was connected with the coins. And it has also been suggested that they may have been religious artifacts or even fortune-telling devices. The later speculation is based on the fact that most examples have been found in Gallo-Roman sites, and smaller dodecahedrons with the same features, meaning the holes and the knobs on them, have been made from gold, and they were found in Southeast Asia along the Maritime Silk Road, and they have been used for decorative purposes. And the earliest items appear to be of these like Roman descent. So still, they're honestly like still a mystery. Like, basically nobody really knows exactly what they were used for. Either they're used for these coins, they were just valuable objects used for trade, decorative stuff. People don't know if they're like something to be able to tell the distance of how big something is from certain spaces or whatever. Really, it's just a big mystery, and I don't got time to look too much into it. So we're moving on. If you know, let me know. But as far as I can tell, I couldn't figure it out. So moving on. All right, so this next one is also a really short one. This is the bent pyramid of Sneferu. The first pyramid to be built in Dashur was the pyramid that we now know as the Bent Pyramid of Sneferu. The lower courses of the pyramid were built at an angle of 54 to 55 degrees, but the upper courses at a lower angle of about 43 degrees, giving it the unique shape which has led to its modern name. When it was constructed, originally it was called Sneferu in the Shining South, or Sneferu is Shining, because it was laid and polished in Tumra limestone. And basically, a lot of people just think that the reason why it was actually bent was because middle of the construction, basically they realized that the structure wasn't going to hold it, and it already started to kind of like bend and break inwards. So they just kind of went with it and ended up making it bent like this. That's a lot of it that I could figure out, because some people tried to say that this was supposed to be a new style, but he had built other ones after this and they came out like regular shaped. So a lot more people just assumed that this was a mistake and that they just said, fuck it, we'll finish it, whatever, we moving on to the next one. Anyways, not that interesting, but moving on to the last one from this tier, so let's get it. Okay, so finishing up this level on this iceberg is Pleiades across various civilizations. So this one, it's honestly pretty simple. It's basically just this constellation, Pleiades, which is about these 7 sisters or 6 stars basically, and they've been in multiple stories across multiple civilizations, across multiple times. People even think that basically they've been being seen for about 100,000 years now. So this is just basically saying that it's been across a ton of cultures. Basically, many cultures around the world refer to Pleiades as the 7 sisters and also tell quite similar stories about them. In Greek mythology, the Pleiades were the 7 daughters of the Titan Atlas. He was forced to hold up the sky for eternity and was therefore unable to protect his daughters. To save the sisters from being, we're going to say, graped by the hunter Orion, which is also another constellation, the constellation Orion, Zeus transformed them into stars. And basically a similar story to that one was found among the Aboriginal people across Australia. And in many Australian Aboriginal cultures, the Pleiades are a group of young girls and are often associated with the sacred women of ceremonies and stories. The Pleiades are also important as an element of the Aborigine calendars and astronomy. And for several groups, their first rising at dawn marks the start of winter. So basically, like I said, these like constellations just have been super important across tons of different civilizations, across a bunch of different time and all that stuff. But anyways, that's that. That's the 3rd tier. Gonna do the 4th one at some point this week. I'm also gonna be doing some missing people, like missing 411 type of stuff. I just bought one of the books, you feel me? So about to start trying to do that stuff. I got a bunch of ideas, to be honest with you, but if there's something specific you want to see or want to hear about, let me know, you feel me? I'll try to get to it. Yeah, other than that, man, free the guys, make sure y'all get laid, and yeah, stay dangerous, cuz that's it. I'll catch y'all later.